Hello, denizens of the internet. It is I, Catherial, here to show you a pretty cool Demon Hunter build I've been working on recently. I was getting kind of tired of playing with Unhallowed, the multi-shot build for speed farming. Also with Impale, just thought, I really wanted to play with grenades because aesthetically they're very, very cool. And I wanted to make a speed build out of it, not because I don't really push greater rifts too much. So I wanted something fast and fun, and this is what I came up with. So let's take a look at the build. First off, we're using grenades, obviously. It's a grenade build. Grenade cache. This throws out an additional 3 grenades. Well, not an additional, but it throws out 3 grenades. In the little bit of testing that I've done, I found that this is actually a little bit better than cluster. Cluster grenades seems to do a bit more damage. Well, not maybe so much more damage, but it just, because it spreads out so much more, it seems to just affect more of the area. If you have a big group of spread out mobs, it just, grenades are everywhere, so aesthetically it's pretty cool too. Using Marked for Death here just for the damage increase, contagion. So as you're running around, you just put this on some really low level enemy. Once that thing dies, it just immediately spreads to everything around it within 30 yards. So keep that up just for the additional damage. Vengeance Dark Heart just for damage reduction. You could change this to something else if you wanted. Usual Demon Hunter builds would use Seethe or something, but you don't really need that because you'll never have hatred problems in this build ever. So Dark Heart, just a nice damage reduction there. Next up, Vault, Trail of Cinders. I'm using Trail of Cinders here not only because we're stacking fire damage on pretty much all of our gear, but in addition it does the 300% weapon damage, and in combination with Danetta's Hatred, which we're using for weapons, it does extra damage, 800% more damage on top of that. So it's just a really great additional amount of damage that you can do to the monsters as you're just vaulting around. Preparation, because we are using Unhallowed Essence, so we need Invigoration for the maximum increase to Discipline, because every point of discipline you have is 40% more damage. So this is just required. Companion, Wolf Companion, right now just for the simple damage buff. With the cooldown on the build, this is up pretty frequently. So you have a lot of extra damage pretty often. If you're having survivability issues, you could change this to the Boar. Or another skill if you really need to. Passives, Numbing Traps. Since we're hitting everything with grenades constantly, this is going to reduce the damage of the monsters by 25% pretty much constantly. So that's, you're not buffing your damage reduction, you're reducing their damage, which is helpful. Obviously Grenadier increases the damage of the grenades and the explosion size of the grenades. So this is pretty much required. Tactical Advantage. I've been using this one since you're pretty much vaulting around constantly in this build. You're not going to really need the movement speed too much, but using this actually increases the speed with which you vault. So the animation's a bit quicker, and so you can kind of vault around a bit faster than you would have been able to otherwise. And then Call of the Weak, just for increased damage against slowed or chilled enemies. Let's take a quick look at the gear. Obviously, Unhallowed Essence is the key here. You need 5 pieces: the helm, shoulders, chest, gloves, and boots. On here, on the chest, for sure, you should get 12 maximum discipline. Again, every point of discipline that you have is going to increase the amount of damage you do by 40%. So my gear actually is really under-tuned, and already I'm doing T13 pretty easily. So there's another point of discipline I could get here, and this isn't even ancient. So then on top of that, some of the other gear, Focus and Restraint. Again, mine aren't great, but this is going to give you the 50% increased damage all the time. Now, unfortunately, we're not using any resource spending attacks in the build, so you're going to lose out on the other 50%. But this was actually preferable over something like using Traveler's Pledge and Compass Rose, because you're moving constantly, and so you're never going to see the damage increase from the Traveler's Pledge Compass Rose combination. So this seems to be better for that. So that's why I'm using it. Amulet, ideally using Hellfire Amulet. I don't have a good one. So right now I'm just using my best amulet, which is not that great. But yeah, you'd want a Hellfire Amulet. You know, any of the typical passives would probably be good. You want fire damage as much as possible. So I would get fire damage, crit chance, and crit damage. And then augment eventually. And none of my gear is augmented right now, just FYI. A couple pieces of, let's do the bracers. I'm using Raps of Clarity, again for damage reduction, because since you're using your hatred generators as your primary damage dealing ability in this build, you have damage reduction pretty much all the time. And that's a maximum of 35. Again, mine aren't great, but they do have 20% fire damage, so that is an added bonus. Hellcat Waistguard, bread and butter of the build. You basically need this. You have to get a pretty good one to have the grenades have a chance to bounce 5 times. That's going to be the maximum number of additional times they can bounce. And you can also get grenade damage on here. So these are pretty decent. Again, not ancient by any means. Depth Diggers. This is just going to basically buff your primary skills. I have almost 100% on mine, so pretty good. These are pretty decent. And then finally, for gear, we're using Danetta's Hatred, Danetta's Revenge, and Danetta's Spite. Basically what this is doing, it is going to allow you to vault all the time. You will basically, the only movement that you're going to need in this build at all is vault. You can run around if you would choose to, but otherwise you can vault around to your heart's content. Again, on both of these weapons, you're going to want max discipline plus 12%, or plus 12 rather. I luckily have that on both of these. I had to roll it on this one. Neither of these have been augmented with Ramaladni's gift. So again, my setup has a lot of room for improvement, and already I'm doing T13 very, very easily. So that's the gear. I think I went over everything there. Let's check out the legendary gems quickly. I'm using Bane of the Trapped. Again, for the it helps with the Call of the Weak, and it's just increased damage to any enemies under control impairing effects. Using Simplicity Strength. This is basically required. You could run without it, but I don't know why you would want to. Increases damage of primary skills. Mine's only rank 30, so I'm only doing 40% extra damage there. But then this also helps heal you once you hit level 20 or rank 25. And then finally, I'm using Gogok of Swiftness. Basically, it's just going to up your attack speed. And obviously, with a generator build, the faster that you can get the grenades out, the more grenades there are going to be and the more damage you're going to do. And this is going to help with your cooldown reduction overall once you get to rank 25, which is what mine's at. All right, so that's pretty much the build. Paragon is not super important in this. I have a pretty, I'm only Paragon 610. So really, max hatred you basically don't need at all, because you're not using hatred and you're not gaining anything by having more hatred. So Dexvit movement speed, always nice. Attack speed probably first. Cooldown reduction, because you want to get up to around 35-36%. Again, with the Gogok, it could be a little bit less, just so you can have permanent vengeance. And then crit chance, crit damage. Defensive stats, area damage probably first. You really don't care that much about resource cost reduction, but gold find, who cares? Finally, in the cube, let's take a look. I am using Dawn because every Demon Hunter build ever pretty much uses Dawn. So you're going to want that. And again, with the cooldown reduction, you should be able to have 100% uptime on your Vengeance. For the armor slot, Hunter's Wrath, your primary skills attack 30% faster and deal 60% increased damage. Again, just a huge buff to the grenades, which in this build is all you're really damaging with. And then finally, Ring of Royal Grandeur. Need this because we're only using 5 pieces of the Unhallowed Essence. Alright guys, that is pretty much it for the build. I will give you a very quick look at some of the gameplay here. Again, this is on T13, and this is me not having perfectly optimized gear even a little bit. I mean, there is a ton of improvement that I can do with this one, but I'll kind of show you how to do this. So you put up Vengeance, you apply this, and you're basically just crisscrossing over the top of monsters because you want to put down the trail of cinders underneath them, and you're basically just vaulting constantly. So I'm just holding down, and as you can see, it's taking me a little while to kill these monsters, but again, that's because my gear is far from optimized. And every couple vaults, just make sure that you're getting marked for death put down on them. And you can stand still a little if you need to. You know, if there's one monster left, oh, and I just died standing in the explosion. But again, it's a really fun and fast build because you're just constantly vaulting. You could easily use this for a bounty build because of the high mobility. It's really quite good no matter what you're using it for. Obviously, this is not optimized for Greater Rift pushing. There's a different version of the build that would be better for that. But yeah, just vault back and forth, create some crisscrosses under the monsters so that the increased vault damage of Trail of Cinders is going to melt them a bit faster. And since there's just a couple monsters left, you can kind of just stand still for the last couple and just rain grenades down on them. So there you go, guys. That's the build, the raining grenades build. Tell me what you think about it in the comments below. I am streaming on Twitch most evenings for a couple hours from about 9 to midnight Central Standard Time. If you want to come drop by, it's at twitch.tv/Catherial. The link to the build is in the description below. You can follow me on Twitter at Catherial. Thank you guys. I hope to see you again very soon.